Board of Aldermen will come to session. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Kotar. Alderwoman Rice. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Volmer. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Vice President Rhodey.
Present.
Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvie. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Navarro. President Reed. You have 17 present, Mr. Vice President. Oh my. Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Ogilvie. Alderman Boyd. Present. Alderman Cone. 21. President Reed. 21. You have 21, Mr. Vice President.
Quorum being present, we will begin today's meeting with a prayer led by Reverend John Watson from the Maple Temple. Reverend.
We quote from the Holy Scriptures, "Not that we are sufficient of ourselves to think anything as ourselves, but our sufficiency is of God." Gracious God, Heavenly Father, as we begin another session in this chamber, we first thank you for the progress we made thus far. We acknowledge that your grace makes us sufficient for every task at hand. Your strength is what holds us steady as we live through these changing times. Speak your words to our hearts and minds on today. Make your will known that we may know and always walk the path of righteousness, justice, and love in our great city. Unite us that we may continue to dispel distrust. Give wisdom to those who govern us, that they may chart a path ahead that helps us bridge the gulf that separates us as people and maintains understanding and goodwill in our communities. Into your arms we commit ourselves, our family, our community, our city. Amen.
Announcement and special order of the day. The chair recognizes the Alderwoman from the 19th for the purpose of recognition of the courtesy resolution consent calendar.
Thank you. I'd like to ask for adoption of our courtesy resolution calendar for today. It's moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Alderman from the 23rd, would you like to approach the dais for the purpose of your resolution?
Didn't say all those say aye.
We vote after. Second after the presentation.
And then, Tom? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. All. Okay. Yeah. So you might want to ask the clerk to read it. And then present it.
Yes. Mr. Clerk, would you please read the resolution for Officer Tom Runn for me, please?
Whereas the City of St. Louis Board of Aldermen have apprised that after more than 39 years of dedicated service to the City of St. Louis with the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department, Police Sergeant Thomas J. Rund will retire on April 28, 2018. And whereas Sergeant Rund began his career with the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department as a radio clerk on February 13, 1979, and as a commissioned officer on December 7, 1982. And whereas throughout his distinguished career, Sergeant Rund has held various assignments with the department, including service in the 6th District, the 6th District Detective Bureau, the Area 3 Detective Bureau, the North Patrol Detective Bureau, the 7th District Detective Bureau, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, and the 2nd District. And whereas since April 20th, 2015, he has served as a 4th District Precinct Sergeant, and Sergeant Rund has received 5 Chief Letters of Commendation, 8 Department Awards of Excellence, 1 Officer of the Year Award, and 2 Officer of the Month Awards, all for outstanding professionalism and dedication to duty. And whereas Sergeant Rund served on the Major Case Squad of Greater St. Louis, and his investigative skills, integrity, and sincere friendship have earned him the respect and admiration of his fellow officers and co-workers. And Sergeant Rund is looking forward to a well-deserved retirement where he will spend time with his grandchildren. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Aldermen of the City of St. Louis that we pause in our deliberations to congratulate Police Sergeant Thomas J. Rund for his 39 years of commitment and loyalty to the City of St. Louis, and we wish him peace and happiness in his retirement. And we further direct the clerk of this Board of Aldermen to spread a copy of this resolution across the minutes of these proceedings and to prepare a commemorative copy to the end that it may be presented to our honoree at a time and place deemed appropriate by the sponsor.
Thank you. I actually have known Tom quite a long while because he's from my neighborhood. He also served in the Detective Bureau up in North St. Louis with my son Clint. So I actually have personal knowledge of how hard he's worked to make our community a better place. In a day where a lot of times people are down on the police, I can tell you that I'm proud to be up here. I was supposed to be in a golf tournament today, and I got someone to take my place because I personally wanted to come and do this resolution. I know that we have several co-sponsors of the resolution, and I would ask that if we had a motion to do this in banc, I would certainly like to see this done. I would like to see this board as a whole honor Officer Rund for his 39 years of dedicated service to us. And I'll let you come and say some words here. And
Yes, I'd just like to say a few things. Thank you, Alderman Vaquero. Thank you, Alderman Rhodey. It's an honor to accept this proclamation. The proclamation is actually an acknowledgement of all officers who protect and serve this city. I am only one of many police officers who have dedicated their career to the sanctity of human life. No matter who you are, you deserve to be respected and protected. I would be remiss not to mention that my lovely wife, Carolyn, is just as responsible for this proclamation as I am. Carolyn and I have been together for during my entire career. We are going on 34 years of marriage, and we were engaged for 2 years. We have 4 children, and it takes a lot to put up with a police officer's schedule and work environment, but she was able to endure. I would like to thank Carolyn for her love, support, encouragement, and patience. I'd also like to thank my 4 children, Sarah, Tom, Joe, and Andrew, for their love and support. And I'm sure it is very challenging for them at times to know that their father was a police officer, especially in today's climate. Sarah, Tom, Joe, and Andrew could not be here today. My mom, Lois, who's here with us, that's where I got my hair from. I'd like to thank her for instilling me honor, integrity, and the need to help people and others. Once again, thank you for the recognition, and may the city prosper and thrive under your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Officer. I think all of us for the city appreciate the difficulty of being a police officer in today's environment. Appreciate your many years of service. I'm going to assume that the alderman from the 23rd made a motion that we do this in bank. Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. Hearing no objections, we'll consider this resolution passed in bank.
I'll ask to make a different resolution. So
Okay. Do a little photo op here. All right, we still have the consent calendar that we need to vote on as well. There was a motion and a second for the consent calendar. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay. Approval of the minutes. Alderman from the 18th is recognized on the motion to approve the minutes.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move for approval of the April 16th and 17th minutes.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And it appears that I've already made my first mistake of the day and we haven't made it past down to 6. I missed introduction of the honored guest. Introduction of honored guest. Alderwoman from the 14th.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. But I would like to introduce my dear friend, Stephanie Alcorn Davis. She's a college friend. We both attended Harris Stowe Teachers College together a few years ago, and she's visiting today from out of town, way out of town. So I would like to recognize her. Also, Sinette Magnus from Lewis Rice. Demetris Alfred from Firefighters Local 73, Megan McBride from Kelly Group, and Clinton McBride from the Laborers Union. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderwoman from the 11th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. I would like to introduce Anthony Lancia with Association of General Contractors as my guest. Thank you.
Alderman from the 24th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to break from tradition and introduce a long list of honored and welcome guests today. From the Sierra Club, we have Michael Berg and Gretchen Widdell Barwick, both constituents of mine. Also, from the Home Builders Association of Eastern Missouri, we have Alex Scharf, Emily Schwantz-Post, and Celeste Reuter. Welcome them. And of course, Leroy Grant with Grant Communications. Thank you.
Alderwoman from the 13th.
President and members of the board, I'd like to have as my honored guests Jeff Hans and Samuel Adams of the Carpenters Union. Thank you.
Alderwoman from the 2nd. 27th. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much.
Okay, that's 2 for those keeping count.
I wanted to welcome Mr. Frederick Searcy with Plumbers and Pipe Fitters. Thank you.
Alderman from the 12th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to welcome State Representative Bruce Franks here today, C.J. Redmond and Sterling from former member of Bi-State, and anyone else I missed, and the lady from the 27th that did used to be the second ward seat for years, so that's probably why the mix-up was.
Alderman from the 26th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Thank you, Lisa. I'd like to announce my honor guest today will be Wally Price IV. and a longtime friend, been known for many, many years, Mr. Anthony Shaheed. Thank you.
Alderman from the 22nd.
I'll yield to the Alderman from the 9th. He was already standing.
Oh, Alderman from the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would also like to have as my special guest today my state representative from the 78th, Mr. Bruce Franks, Jr.
Alderman from the 22nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, I'd like to have Mr. Leroy Grant with AT&T as my special guest.
If there are no others, we'll recognize the Alderman from the, Alderman from the 3rd.
Might be a little short. It's okay. Good morning. Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, board members. How's everybody doing? Would like to have my special guest, the 3rd Ward residents upstairs. Good morning, Ms. May, Marilyn, and Ms. Pat. Always a pleasure to see you, beautiful ladies. Good morning. Thank you.
Seeing none other, we'll recognize the Alderman from the 11th to wrap us up today. 10th. Man, okay, that's 3.
Thank you, Mr. President, for a day. As we're here on April 27th, which is U.S. Grant's birthday for you folks who'd like to go out to Grant's Farm. They're probably having a birthday party out there farm today. Go out and enjoy yourself and get your 2 free beers at the end of the tour. In 1965, Pampers were invented, and everyone thanks the Lord for those. In 1974, there was a march in Washington, D.C. to help impeach the president, Mr. Nixon. I believe there might be one in Jefferson City this week, so times don't change that much. But more importantly, this is Morse code day, so ... Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Item number 6, report of city officials.
Report of the Clerk of the Board of Aldermen. We have none, Mr. Vice President. Office of the Mayor. Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for appointment to the St. Louis Jefferson Solid Waste Management Board. The appointment of Mr. Donald C. Orff, Jr., who resides in the 16th Ward and whose term will expire on December 19th, 2021. I respectfully request your approval of the appointment.
Alderman 16th, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request that we approve the mayor's appointment to the Solid Waste Management Board.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion passes.
Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individual for appointment to the Port Authority. The appointment of Mr. William A. K. Jr., who resides in the 23rd Ward and whose term will expire on November 22nd, 2021. I respectfully request your approval of the appointment.
Alderman from the 19th, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to move that we adopt the appointment from the mayor's office for Mr. William A. Kay to the Port Authority.
It was moved and seconded by the Alderman from the 13th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll dispense with items 7 through 10 on the agenda. Item number 11, first reading of board bills.
Board Bill Number 2, sponsored by Alderwoman Martin, an ordinance recommended by the Planning Commission on February 7, 2018 to change the zoning of property in City Block 3084 from J Industrial District and K Unrestricted District to the K Unrestricted District only at 7500-18 South Broadway and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill Number 3, sponsored by Alderman Bolmer, an ordinance recommended by the Planning Commission on February 7, 2018 to change the zoning of property in City Block 4741 from A Single-Family Dwelling District and F Neighborhood Commercial District to the A Single-Family Dwelling District only at 5201 Filer and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill Number 4, sponsored by Alderman Kotar, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Public Service to conditionally vacate travel in 10-foot wide L-shaped alley in City Block 798 as bounded by Shenandoah, 10th Street, Lamai, and Menard in the city. Board Bill Number 5, sponsored by Alderman Vaccaro, an ordinance establishing a detention facility advisory commission that shall receive public complaints regarding the City of St. Louis Justice Center and medium security institution detention facilities, and shall, at its discretion, review and investigate such complaints as well as patterns of issues and systemic concerns the city's detention facilities and their operation it has identified, and where the Commission deems appropriate, make recommendations to the Department of Public Safety, the Board of Aldermen, and Mayor with respect to corrections. Board Bill Number 6, sponsored by Alderwoman Howard, an ordinance repealing Ordinance 70475, and in lieu thereof enacting a new ordinance to be known as the City Whistleblower Law, pertaining to reporting improper governmental action and providing protection from retaliatory action for reporting and cooperating in the investigation and/or prosecution of improper governmental action, containing definitions, procedures for reporting improper governmental action and retaliation, and penalties, and containing a severability and emergency clause. Board Bill Number 7, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Airport Commission, the Board of Public Safety, and the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, establishing and authorizing a public works and improvement program at St. Louis Lambert International Airport, a total estimated cost of $15 million, authorizing an initial appropriation in the total amount of $5,382,543 from the Airport Development Fund, and containing a severability and an emergency clause. Board Bill Number 8, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Airport Commission and the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing a first supplemental appropriation in the total amount of $481,302 from the Airport Development Fund into the Airfield Building and Environs Ordinance 7057, approved July 10, 2017, for the payment of costs authorized therein and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill Number 9, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingracia, an ordinance to revise Ordinance 70736, approved March 2, 2018, pertaining to the collection of administrative citation fines assessed by the Building Commissioner, containing a severability clause and an emergency clause. Board Bill Number 10, sponsored by Alderman Kotar and Alderwoman Ingracia, an ordinance pertaining to the zoning code requiring that certain uses that are regulated by a plat and petition process under the license code and building code be made a conditional use, prohibited use, or use by right under the zoning code. Board Bill Number 11 through 19 will not be used this session. Board Bill 20, sponsored by Alderwoman Spencer, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 3452 Oregon. Board Bill Number 21, sponsored by Alderwoman Howard, an ordinance submitting to the qualified voters of the city a proposal to revise Section 2 of Article 8 of the City Charter, which requires city employees to reside within the boundaries of the city and thus allows said employees, except for city agency and department of directors appointed by the mayor, to reside outside of the boundaries of the city, and providing for an election to be held for voting on the proposed revision and the manner of voting thereat, and for the publication, certification, deposit, and recording of this ordinance, and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill Number 22, sponsored by Alderwoman Spencer, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 3429 through 3431 Ohio. Board Bill Number 23, sponsored by Alderman Gunther, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 3520 Wisconsin. Board Bill Number 24, sponsored by Alderman Kotar and Alderwoman Ingracia, an ordinance promoting the use of energy-efficient heating through the connection to the downtown steam distribution system, requiring the continual use of the downtown steam distribution system for any development project occurring in downtown St. Louis seeking municipal financial incentives, prohibiting the Clean Energy Development Board of the city from approving financing for any project that would result in a commercial building disconnecting from or no longer using the downtown steam distribution system for heat. A portion of the net profits to be remitted to the SWMDC and containing a severability clause. Board Bill Number 25, sponsored by Alderman Mohammed, an ordinance submitting to the qualified voters of the city a proposed amendment to the charter of the city to maintain the Board of Aldermen as a body of 28 aldermen representing 28 wards and preventing its reduction beginning December 31st, 2021 to a body of 14 aldermen representing 14 wards as called for under Article 1, Section 3 of the city charter, providing for an election to be held for voting on the proposed amendment and the manner for the voting, and for the publication, certification, deposit, and recording of this ordinance, and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill Number 26, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingracia, an ordinance to revise Ordinance Number 70737, approved March 2nd, 2018, and pertaining to enforcement of code violations related to buildings, structures, and premises in the city by amending Ordinance 70737, Section 1, Subsection C, related to the procedures for the collection of administrative citations, containing a severability clause and an emergency clause. Board Bill Number 27, sponsored by Alderman Moore, an ordinance repealing Ordinance 70087 and in lieu thereof enacting a new ordinance prohibiting the issuance of any package or drink liquor license for any currently non-licensed premises within the boundaries of the 4th Ward Liquor Control District and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill Number 28, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for the 2647-2651 Washington. Board Bill Number 29, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance approving redevelopment plan for the Tiffany Neighborhood Scattered Sites area. Board Bill Number 30, sponsored by Alderman Mohammed, an ordinance directing the Director of Streets to temporarily close, barricade, or otherwise impede the flow of traffic on Anderson at the north curb line of Dryden and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill Number 31, sponsored by Alderman Vaccaro, an ordinance establishing a 4-way stop site at the intersection of Mardell and Sulphur, regulating all traffic traveling eastbound and westbound on Mardell at Sulphur, and regulating all traffic traveling northbound and southbound on Mardell and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill Number 32, sponsored by Alderman Boyd, an ordinance concerning certain business license regulations set forth in Title 8, which require the completion of a plat and neighborhood consent petition prior to obtaining an occupancy permit, repealing ordinances 56788, 57294, and 58645 pertaining to arcades, containing a severability clause and an effective date clause. Board Bill Number 33, sponsored by Alderwoman Martin, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 532 Bates. Board Bill Number 34, sponsored by Alderwoman Murphy, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 5019, 5032, and 5034 Ulena. Board Bill Number 35, sponsored by Alderwoman Spencer Ogilvie, Alderman Ogilvie, Alderwoman Navarro, Alderwoman Green, Alderwoman Martin, Alderwoman Ingracia, and Alderwoman Rice. An ordinance pertaining to campaign contribution limits, amending Ordinance 70357, Sections 1 and 3, and repealing Section 4 of said ordinance to acknowledge newly passed State of Missouri maximum limits on campaign contributions and to decrease maximum limits on campaign contributions for local elections as provided therein. Board Bill Number 36 is not used this session. Board Bill Number 37, sponsored by Alderman Kennedy, an ordinance pertaining to the authorization of a mutual aid agreement between the City of St. Louis and St. Clair County, Illinois, for the St. Clair County, Illinois law enforcement officer employees to provide law enforcement services and activities on Metrolink property within the city limits, containing definitions, a severability clause, and an emergency clause. Board Bill Number 38, sponsored by Alderman Williamson, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 5780 McPherson. Board Bill Number 39, sponsored by Alderwoman Martin, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 7401 Vermont. Board Bill Number 40, sponsored by Alderman Ogilvie, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 6452 Nashville Avenue and 6453 Wade. That is the first reading, Mr. Vice President.
Alderman Kennedy is recognized for the purpose of introducing an honored guest. Alderman.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President, members of the board. I'd like to introduce as my special guest today Mr. Jesse Todd, the committeeman of the 18th Ward, over to my left. Thank you.
Item number 12 on the agenda, reference to committee.
Transportation and Commerce, Board Bills number 7 and 8. Streets, Traffic, and Refuge, Board Bills number 4, 30, and 31. Housing, Urban Development, and Zoning, Board Bills 2, 3, 10, 22, 23, and 24. Legislation, Board Bill number 6, 21, 25, and 35. Neighborhood Development, Board Bill 20, 28, 29, 33, 34, 38, 39, and 40. Public Safety, Board Bill number 5, number 9, number 26, number 27, and number 37. That is the extent of references to committee, Mr. Vice President.
We'll dispense with items line number, we'll dispense with line items 13 through 19. We previously addressed the courtesy resolution consent calendar. We will now proceed to the first reading of resolutions. Alderwoman from the 11th, you're recognized for resolution number 8.
Resolution number 8, sponsored by Alderwoman Martin, Enterprise Zone for U.S. Durham Milling Incorporated.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask that this resolution be referred to Housing and Urban Development, please.
All those, it's been moved and seconded by the Alderman from the 18th. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Resolution number 9.
Resolution number 9, sponsored by Alderman Volmer, Enterprise Zone for St. Louis Properties, Inc.
Alderman from the 10th, you recognize for the purpose of resolution number 9.
Thank you, Mr. President. For today, I request that resolution number 9 be assigned to the HUD's committee.
Been moved and seconded by the Alderman from the 22nd. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, hearing no objection, the motion passes with a 1 vote. We will we'll dispense with item number 22. Item number 23, miscellaneous and unfinished business.
Mr. Vice President, we have none.
Announcements.
There will be a full board meeting at 10 a.m. on May 4th, 2018 in the Aldermanic Chambers.
Any other announcements? Alderman from the 22nd.
Yes, Mr. Vice President, members of the board, I'd like to call a Streets, Traffic, and Refuge meeting for 9 o'clock on Tuesday.
Alderwoman from the 1st.
Mr. President, members of the board, I'd like to call a public employees meeting for 10 o'clock on Wednesday, and it will be a kind of organizational meeting about some things we're going to be doing in public employees.
Any other announcements? Seeing no other announcements, the chair will... Oh, I'm sorry, Alderman from the 23rd.
I'm sorry, I was busy talking. Yes, we're going to have a legislative meeting this Wednesday at 6:30 in the evening in the Kennedy Room. So, and the one board bill that I know we're going to discuss that night will be Board Bill 25, and there will be public testimony. And if the sponsors of the other bill choose to have theirs heard at the same time, we'll notify the clerk to add it to the agenda. Thank you. Okay, so, I'm sorry. So go ahead and add Board Bill 21 to the agenda, and I also will let the clerk know by the end of the meeting if anything else can be heard.
Okay, Alderwoman from the 19th for announcements.
Mr. Vice Chairman, I'd like to schedule a transportation meeting for Thursday, May 3rd at 10:30. Thank you.
No other announcements. The chair will recognize the alderman from the 18th for the excused alderman.
Vice President, members of the board, I move that the alderperson from the 4th, 6th, and 25th be excused for necessary absence.
It's been seconded by the alderwoman from the 27th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, by your vote, you've sustained the motion of the alderman from the 18th. The alderman from the 18th is recognized for the adjournment motion.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President, members of the board. I move that the board adjourns until Friday, May 4th, 10 a.m.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Today's meeting is adjourned.
We're out.
All right.